Good morning, friends. In this video, I'm gonna illuminate or uncover the posturing and performance that has been put out by Biden and Johnson and PutinS and so on about Ukraine. Basically, it's posturing and scare tactics. These partners of the establishment in Europe and their visits to Putin and now Biden and so on, and those lizard eyes of Moscow are kind of pushing scare tactics and trying to unnerve Ukraine or Ukrainian people. What do they want from them is really basically to abandon their quest to join NATO. They say it's security, Russia's security, but that's superficial, of course. There's much under the hood to be discovered. You know, the complexity of the car is not in the cabin, rather it is in its electronics and its engine and under the hood and undercarriage and so on. So when they say Russia's security, that's not the case, folks. And that's what I'm about to explain to you now. These scare tactics are meant to unnerve and demand the Ukrainians into abandoning their quest to join NATO. But first, right now, joining NATO is now or never. Joining NATO is now or no Ukraine. So if at this juncture of the history of the country of Ukraine, if the Ukrainian establishment or president and those who rule the country falter and abandon their quest to join NATO, this is it, folks. The country is gone. And eventually, even if not now, the PutinS or the lizard eyes of Moscow will come and invade the country or take it over little by little. It is not a matter of security for Putin. It is a matter of dominating, or PutinS, I should say. It is a matter of owning the country and moving westward. As I explained earlier, you know, the tripod of Israel, Iran in the Middle East, Putin and PutinS in Europe, and the Chinese regime in Asia, and certain regimes, sparse and sprawling regimes in Africa, Kenya and Ethiopia and so on. And now, of course, Egypt, you know, the rule of Egypt, and now all this killing that's happening in Libya and Syria is to transform it as a colony ruled by Israel. Basic and simple, nothing else really. And Europe, of course, although the establishment has been under duress and run by Israel for a long time, the status quo is not accepted. The Germanics and the Scandinavians are looked upon no different than the Sunnis of Syria and Iraq and possibly Afghanistan as well. They still have recovered from World War I and World War II. Apparently, they think they learned their lesson. They know how to avoid a war now. But that's not how PutinS or Lavrov's or lizard eyes see you, in fact. So it's not a matter of security. It's not a matter of security of Russia. It's not a matter of geopolitical animosity. It's not a matter of borders. No. What is this? It's slow-moving machines coming from the east, and that's namely Moscow, to own the country. Because Putin, and others of his junta stated publicly, they're on record, saying that historically Crimea and Ukraine and so on are part of their land, part of their country. Not that they themselves belong to that country, but they run the country, and of course they own the business now. If you want to consider, it's like somebody taking over a farm and now wants to restore the historical farm, which has been fluid and dynamic here and there, back and forth, during the Middle Ages and before that, czars in Europe and wars and, so on and so forth. But that's what it is. Make no mistake about it. Now, what would Ukraine lose by compromising now? A lot. If you lose now, you cannot come back again and then try to join NATO. Period. You cannot do that. Because if the PutinS have succeeded now in preventing you from joining NATO, they know they can do it again. And next time they do it, they will actually do it with force. They have more. They will have more iron in the fire, like they say, or fire in the hole to do so. But they will not wait until Ukraine comes back again or tries again to join NATO, because right now, even if they arrive at some kind of agreement and prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, the plan is very simple. They will come back and destroy Ukraine. You need evidence? Okay. In 90s, I believe it was in the 90s when Chechnya tried to declare independence, and it was Boris Yeltsin, I believe, who came into the country and wanted to fight their independence and make sure they stayed under his rule and hegemony, that of his regime. And eventually the Chechens did win the war against them. Even at the end, toward the end, there were some 5,000 Russian troops who were surrounded, I believe in Grozny or somewhere. And Boris Yeltsin had no choice but to negotiate their return, and because they were losing in Chechnya. And the president of Chechen Republic then, traveled to the Kremlin, and they met and they talked, and they agreed. Yeltsin agreed that they can declare independence and so on and so forth. But he demanded, of course, for the return of the soldiers and end of hostilities and so on. But he demanded that Chechnya postpones or delays its declaration of independence and joining the United Nations by 5 years. But before the 5 years were over, Yeltsin has delivered leadership to Putin, who came into the country with a whole replete with hatred and disgust and loath, L-O-T-H. He was loathsome, and basically committed a genocide. In 1 week, after shelling Grozny for 1 week, he murdered no less than 250,000 or 250,000 civilians. So there is a history there. Even if they agreed with you now to join NATO, they will not change their consideration and their regards toward Ukraine, period. The lizards do eat other animals and carcasses and so on and so forth. And their nature is as such, filth, greed, filthy, to the bone. They're willing to do anything. They are weasels. They're willing to do anything to arrive at their end. Even Machiavelli, the man with the prince, ends justify means, would shy away from doing what these PutinS or Putinites will do to arrive at their means, to achieve their purposes and means. So right now, folks, if you back down, you just you hand Ukraine over on a silver platter or a gold plate to Putin's, because it's a matter of time. Even if Ukraine falters now and refrains from or accept a compromise on not joining NATO, and then later come back to join NATO, the NATO countries will not entertain that notion. Why? Because now they have what they really were hoping for is an experience to prevent them from allowing Ukraine to join in or authorize Ukraine to join in, because obviously they don't want to go through that again. But that will not happen. If right now the sticking point for the future of Ukraine, the future of Europe is standing on Ukraine joining NATO. If Ukraine refrains and is unnerved and scared into abandoning their quest to join NATO, and they succumb to the innuendos and scare tactics of Biden and of Putin and of Johnson and of Macron and Schultz and whoever it is, of course, under the umbrella of Israel, right? That's it, folks. Say goodbye to Ukraine now and Europe later. Putin will not, Putins, I'm going to use a plural term, Putins, because they are the same personality, the same skunk, soul of skunk, in them and so on. They don't care about agreements, they don't care about treaties, they don't care about alliances, they don't care about documents, they don't care about, and of course, Ukraine has witnessed that, the Minsk agreement, when they delivered their nuclear weapons to Russia, and Russia in turn promised not to touch their sovereignty or invade their territory or anything else. They broke it no sooner than they took the weapons, no sooner than they attacked the country and began to have these bogus, dubious claim about its land and its sovereignty and so on and so forth. So the Putins will always be there, and this is more for Europeans really in general, and Americans for that matter, than just for Ukrainians, because NATO, no NATO, United Nations, Vienna Agreement, documents, you can take the Putins in front of a judge and sign an agreement if they were a person, and have witnesses to it and so on, and have them swear and an oath to honor their end of the bargain. They will only honor their end of the bargain if they have no choice. And I don't mean if they have no choice, meaningly, they're bound by an agreement. No, they don't care about that. They don't give a diddly squat about it. Meaningly, they're going to suffer consequences. And they usually weigh their situation, like try to balance whether they lose more or win more or so on. So that's how they function, those Putins. You can shake their hand all you want. You can sign an agreement all you want. You can with them all you want. You can have a bargain with them all you want. You can even go to war as to make sure that they win the war and they come back and will bite you. They have absolutely no regard for anything that is outside of their Putin realm of thinking. Everything else outside is rejected. Everything else outside is made to be destroyed. That's the Putin mind. They're lizards with unflinching and blinking eyes, basic and simple. And lizards or pythons or alligators, you can never domesticate. You can never have a relationship with based on nature and humanity and so on. Ukrainians, you're not doing so bad, actually. All this posturing is due to one fact, and one fact alone, is that Putin cannot just invade with impunity. If they can invade and they know they're going to win, they will have done it already. Believe it or not, these creatures, these lizard eyes, don't have any respect or any consideration for anything. They usually weigh in finances, in financial terms, everything. They try to own everything in military terms. They want to destroy everyone in government or rule term. They want to rule everyone. And that's all they understand. That's really basically all they understand. The only thing that keeps them in check is really if they know that making a move will make them suffer and lose or suffer consequences of. That's it, folks. Europeans, Germanics and Scans, I promise you this, that those Putins have bad intentions for you. But you may say, well, how about Eastern Europe or French or Spanish or Italians and Baltics and so on and so forth? They may or may not, I don't know, but I would wager that they do. However, the life you live under their rule will be pretty lame and pretty bad, and you will start thinking about migrating to the United States and Canada and Australia and New Zealand afterwards, which may or may not allow you to migrate, because now the establishment in these countries I just mentioned is really the brothers of PutinS and so on. My friends in Europe, for your future is being decided now over a table, right? Between and only by your enemies. You have no presence, and you have no vote in there, and they're deciding your future and so on and so forth, and they're moving slowly. If you want to avoid conflict, you may avoid it for a little while, but eventually it'll hit you or hit your children and posterity, and they will curse you because you abandoned the fight when the fight was when there was a possibility to win the fight. European citizens, it's now or never. Now what's happening in Ukraine is so detrimental to your future. It's so crucial for you. It's so consequential. It's so deadly that you cannot stand by and look on and not do anything about it. Now you may say, well, Ukraine is not in NATO, but say Germany is sending forces to the Baltics and so on. No, that's not the case. Reason being is once, if and when, and I don't think it's going to happen, if and when Putin's take over Ukraine, and then they decide to move against the Baltics or Poland, Germany will not come in. They will find some kind of excuse to say, oh, we have nothing to do with that, and they will start reading you from a 1,000-page book about tactics and dynamics and technicalities and here and there, similar to lawyers defending a criminal person or trying to get out or trying to compromise or strike a deal with the prosecutor and so on. It'll be something similar to that. The word for you as a European citizen, especially if you're Germanic or Scandinavian, the future is dark and bleak for you by way of those lizard-eyed Putins. Make no mistake about that. And to delay until they arrive at your neck of the wood, or in your country or on your border, then your children will suffer the consequences. And you may ask yourself, but isn't that exaggerated a little bit? No, it's not, because they were in your country before in the last century. They were in Germany and they ruled it with iron fist. They were in the Baltics, they were in Poland, they were in Eastern Europe, they were all over Europe. And in the least, that's what Putin is trying to achieve now. My advice to you, Putin is not as strong as you think he is. No. Let him play with his toys, nuclear toys all he wants. By the time things get serious, this guy will not use weapons of mass destruction, period. Two, they're making him look, they're blowing him up, making him look bigger than he is. That's Biden and Macron and Scholz and so on and so forth. If and when a conventional hostilities break between, say, the US military and the Russian military, on Air Force level, US will clear their skies just like they did Iraq before, and that's it. In ours, the skies will belong to F-22 Raptor, F-35, and the F-15, and of course other European nations. On the ground level, the United States military and Western military in general is so superior to that of Russia. From conventionally speaking, Russia is not even a match for the United States and the West in military technology. It's basic and simple, so they're trying to inflate him and blow him up, similar to there are those blowfish or whatever, those animals that basically blow themselves in order to look bigger so that the predator won't attack them. But all they are is just full of air, and that's all there is to it. That's what Putin is. And right now in the West, they're trying to bloat him and glow him. And because of him being one of the legs of the tripod of Israel, that's the keyword for you. That's the keyword for you. So like I said, right now is the time to act and move. If you delay, the longer you delay, the more the wound is going to fester and becomes infected, if you will, that of this modern communism, morbid communism, dressed with some kind of a velvet, like a iron fist, wearing a velvet glove and and trying to look nicer than it was before, but it's really the same creature, the same animal. My dear Europeans, if you hear these words and watch this video, and if you really love your people and concerned about the future of your posterity and your country and the world for that matter, you would let other people hear what I just said and tell them yourself and have them move to counter this threat. It is a weak threat. And if they know they can come into Ukraine without consequences, without suffering defeat, or without suffering a lot of problems and issues, they will have done it already. Have a nice day, my friends. And I wish that you guys stand up for this bully that is being made to look much bigger and much stronger, much more resolved than he really is by the West, by Biden and by Johnson and by Macron and by Scholz and by Annalena and whoever it is. If you love your country and you're in government now, also be careful of those what's called radical movements. Like in France, I'll give you an example. If you open the heart of Le Pen, that's supposedly the anti-immigration, anti-whatever movement in France and so on, that supposedly convince you that they're whites and so on. If you open her heart and see, she will bring Putin over France and have him destroy France. She is not different from Macron or any of those guys in there. Be careful of those movements that profess love of whites in Europe and so on and so forth. I'm not saying for certain that that's all of them are like that, but quite few of them, especially those who appear in the media, are in fact fake and bogus, and they are tentacles of the PutinS. Have a nice day, my friends, and I wish you rise up for the occasion and fight the fight, because you are very capable of fighting the fight against those PutinS, the lizard eyes.